Today is Tuesday, May 26, 2026. This is Quick Start from CBN News. I'm Dan Andros. The U.S. launches self-defense strikes against Iran. We'll have that top story and more on today's podcast, where we bring you news from a Christian perspective. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating. You can email us as well, quickstartpodcast@cbn.org. Joining me today to get through the news of the day, CBN's Billy Hallowell. On the focus story, Billy, we got war in the Middle East. One missionary to Muslims says many are beginning to question Islam and turn to Christ.
Yeah, this is always interesting. I love these stories. We'll get into this. Really, the effect of war on people in the Middle East, and then seeing Jesus in visions and dreams.
Yeah, it happens a lot, reportedly. And so we're going to get into the details on this latest instance of it coming up on the focus story. And on the main thing, a new AI tool is helping parents find resources and answer questions about online child safety concerns. Madison Seals has more on this new project coming up in the main thing today. All right, I want to tell you about Christian Solidarity International. They are the sponsors of our podcast, and as you know, they're on the front lines of Christian persecution around the globe in places like Nigeria. And there's new attacks there that just happened on Friday. These attacks by Muslim Fulani ethnic militia. I mean, this is what's going on in Nigeria. This is the type of thing, according to local residents and reporting from Truth Nigeria, about 15 heavily armed attackers stormed a farm settlement in the evening. They killed a farmer and a tractor operator while they were just going about their work. A brother of one of the victims who escaped the ambush told Truth Nigeria that the attackers arrived suddenly and opened fire before attacking the victims with machetes after that. He said they heard gunshots from different directions and chants of Allahu Akbar. And he said he hid in nearby bushes. They were armed with AK-47 rifles. So this is the type of thing that's going on routinely in Nigeria, where it's crazy what's going on in Nigeria, because out of all the Christians who are killed around the globe, more than 3/4 of them are killed in Nigeria. And so Christian Solidarity International, they've been working on the ground there. They have long-term relationships there. They're working with the pastors there. For families like this, they help restore their broken lives and walk alongside them with whatever it is they need. And this is the type of work they do. And if you want to walk along that work and be the hands and feet of Christ in those types of situations, just go to csi-usa.org/quickstart. That's csi-usa.org/quickstart. And you can be the hands and feet of Christ for our persecuted brothers and sisters in Christ who desperately need it. All right, going to go to the news in 90 seconds now. In the Middle East may be nearing a major turning point tonight after the U.S. launched what officials called self-defense strikes inside southern Iran. According to CENTCOM, American forces hit Iranian missile sites and IRGC boats near the Strait of Hormuz after Iran allegedly threatened U.S. aircraft and attempted to lay naval mines on the key shipping route. Officials say the strikes were defensive and that ceasefire talks are still alive. Marco Rubio says the Trump administration has presented Iran with a proposal to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and enter a limited nuclear agreement. President Trump says the deal would be the exact opposite of Obama's nuclear deal, and warned there will be a great and meaningful agreement or no deal at all. Oil prices actually dropped on hopes of a U.S.-Iran deal that they could stabilize the region and reopen shipping lanes. And 22 years after The Passion of the Christ shocked Hollywood and became a global phenomenon, Mel Gibson is officially bringing audiences back to the story of Jesus, and this time it's going to be even bigger. Lionsgate announced that The Resurrection of the Christ will arrive in theaters as a two-part epic. Part 1 releasing May 6, 2027, and then Part 2 the following Memorial Day weekend in 2028. And Lionsgate released some new images of what this may look like, and they posted it on social media. Those are just some of today's top headlines. You can check out more stories over at cbnnews.com. And Billy, this is going to be interesting for sure. It's kind of a massive distance between when the Passion of Christ came out, and now what's happening here. It's going to be obviously next year still. We're still a year out from this, but they apparently wrapped filming early. Jim Caviezel is not going to play the role of Jesus. And according to Mel Gibson, the sequel explores massive spiritual themes like hell, fallen angels. He called the script a quote unquote an acid trip. So I'm not sure what to expect here from this.
Yeah, no, this is going to be very interesting. I think, there's a lot of room to do really good work here and a lot of room to really upset people theologically too. So that's going to be interesting to see how people react to it. I think obviously a lot of time has passed. There have been a lot of other faith-based movies since The Passion came out. And so I'm interested to see. I know our video, Raj and I talked about this on video on our YouTube channel, and a lot of people reacted to it and were really interested in it. So I think there's going to be a high level of interest. I think the question is it done in a way that makes people excited and happy? And I'm assuming Mel Gibson knows what he's doing, that he won't take too many risks, but I am going to be interested to see what happens.
Well, it's always a challenge too. And some would argue, or should you even do it, trying to portray Jesus? There's no possible way to know exactly how Jesus behaved and how the mannerisms were. And so then you're putting yourself in territory to where you're trying to portray the Son of God. And so that's a very difficult situation to be in. And I'm sure it's why Mel Gibson has said this project has taken up a large portion of the last 20 years of his life. So let's just pray that, because we know whatever happens, it's going to draw a lot of interest, as you were saying. So let's just pray that people's eyes are open to the gospel through this somehow. I mean, that's the best thing that we can be praying for this, because we know that just given the nature of Mel Gibson and how the Passion of the Christ went, that people are certainly going to be interested in it. All right, we're going to go to the focus story now. And amid the war in the Middle East, one missionary to Muslims says many are beginning to question Islam and turn to Christ. So what's the story here?
Yeah, this is interesting. As fighting continues to kind of kick up in the Middle East, and this is nothing new, but we're seeing obviously a newfound war. A lot of Muslims, they're losing their families, their homes, they face uncertainty. And there's this missionary that George Thomas spoke with here at CBN, Pastor Georges Hausney of Horizons International. He said a lot of those people, because of all that chaos, are starting to question Islam. They're turning to Jesus, and really sort of interesting. This pastor, he basically works with a group of Kurdish Muslims who became Christians. They're from Syria, Lebanon, Turkey, and Iraq. And he met with them in South Korea. And they say that they really are now experiencing a freedom they had never known before. They were once restricted in Islam. They now are sharing their story in Christian churches right around the region and in other places in the world. And so it's interesting. This particular pastor, he has spent more than 50 years ministering to Muslims. So he's seen a lot of these stories over the years, and obviously continuing to see with the current conditions of what's happening there. He also had helped translate the Bible into the Kurdish language to help people understand the gospel for the first time. So there's a lot here, but he said there's a real spiritual openness that is growing in the midst of war, which makes sense. When things are uncertain, people are turning to the truth. They're looking for the truth. And so it makes sense that this would happen in the Middle East for sure, in a general sense.
Yeah, and he says that people are also experiencing Jesus in dreams. And, on CBN, of course, we've reported on this. At times, we see surges of this happening. So what's the deal there?
So he talked to this one guy, Pastor Nihad. He's the Kurdish ministry director, and he says he experienced a vision of Jesus while he was in prison by the Syrian government. He was in prison for political reasons, and he said, I could not move in my cell, which was less than a meter wide. My hands were numb, and my body was in so much pain. I remembered reading about Jesus healing the lame, so I told him, Jesus, if you are real, help me. And he said, I saw in a vision a person in white entering my prison cell carrying a bowl of olive oil. Every time he poured oil on my body, the pain went away. And he talked about how during this time he was deeply depressed because no one would help him get out of prison and he wanted to die. But the person in white told him, you are my beloved and I love you so much. And he said, until now, those words continue to comfort me. And he said he recognized that it was Jesus because he had previously read about him in a book written by Billy Graham. He said, somebody gave me the book before I went to prison. I read the prayer of salvation at the end of the book. That may have been the key that opened my spirit to hear God. And so he had this encounter and a vision with Jesus and felt like he was healed. And he now shares his story around the world after he got out of prison. And he said he believes many more Muslims will come to Christ and says that the church needs to be prepared for that. And so we've seen these, stories again and again, not just dreams, but visions of Jesus. Some have even said, when we talk about a vision, it's sort of something in your mind that you see, but some have even said that Jesus physically has appeared to them, which I know some may say, what, really? Is that true? It's like, well, yeah, they've said that he's physically appeared to them and healed them in incredible ways.
Yeah, I mean, you never know how God is going to work to draw people to himself. But like I said, we have seen this in the Middle East before. And this is why CBN is, I think, such an incredible organization, because there's so many things that go on here behind the scenes that a lot of people don't even see. For example, translating the Bible into Farsi and things like that because of people experiencing Jesus like this. And so they want them to now have access to scripture and be able to read it. So translating it into other languages and helping on those fronts and bringing in people and working with them to get stuff like that done. It's so amazing that CBN is taking part in that, because they care about bringing the gospel forth around the globe and not just reporting the news, but engaging in those sorts of events as well. And so when you see reports of this, when you see people experiencing Jesus in dreams, they're having these visions, they're being drawn towards Christ in the midst of this Islam deception that's going on and drawing people away from Christ. And so the fact that God can move in these situations reminds me of Isaiah, that his arm is not too short to save, that don't underestimate God, because he always takes, one thing you see in scripture, Billy, is that God always kind of takes the unlikely route. And I think in a lot of ways it's to bring more glory to himself and make things more evident that it's he who is at work there.
Yeah, no, I love that. And this shows the nature of God, that he's going to meet people, like you were saying, he's going to meet people where they are. And I think it's so easy for us to forget that. I was having this conversation last night with my wife just about how God speaks differently to different people, and the needs you might have. But when you're trapped in a prison cell, or when you're in a place where nobody's telling you about Jesus, you better believe he might show up directly there, right? In a different way than he might for us here in America or in the West.
Yeah, amen to that. We'll definitely be praying for people in the Middle East and Muslims in particular, that they would see Christ and see him for who he truly is. So appreciate you bringing that one to the podcast today. And we're going to go over to the main thing now, and a new AI tool that helps parents find resources and answer questions about online child safety concerns is out. And Lane Schill with the National Center on Sexual Exploitation talked with Madison Seals about the importance of this new project. That's today's main thing.
Lane, I'd like to ask you about this new platform launched by the National Center on Sexual Exploitation that's called Parent Center. Can you talk about what this is?
Yes, happy to. So the Parent Center consists of a website and an AI tool that lives on that website. And it's designed to make parenting in a digital world easier. So parents can come onto this website and get resources about how to prevent harm online, how to talk to their children about the harms online, and what actions to take to protect their families. And on the AI tool, they can ask any sort of question related to the situations that they might find in their own home, such as, my son stumbled across pornography. What do I do now? My daughter just came to me because she's being groomed online. How do I respond to this? And the AI tool will give them direct answers to their questions and also point them towards resources that can better help them. There's so many good tools on the internet to help parents, but they're kind of hard to find, and parents are an overwhelmed group. So the Parent Center is just one place to go to get answers to help parent in this crazy digital world.
Yeah, it is crazy. And as parents, we obviously want to do everything we can to protect our children from negative influences in the world, and especially dangerous ones that try to exploit our children on social media. But like you said, it is overwhelming. The digital age is just constantly changing. And as parents, it's hard enough to keep track of our own online usage and presence online, not to mention the things that our kids are able to access. So how did the Parent Center come about? And is there anything like it out there?
There is nothing quite like it out there. It came about through a lot of conversations. When we started building the Parent Center, we didn't start with the tech. We started by talking to families. So it's been about 3.5 years in the making. And it started with a lot of focus groups where we would go out, we would ask parents questions like, what are you dealing with at home with parenting in a digital world? What does that look like for you? What could we do to help you? And got all kinds of answers from parents about the experiences that they were having and just the overwhelm that they were experiencing. And the gist of what we gathered from those parents is that they just wanted one place that they could go to for answers. They were overwhelmed by all that was facing their children, all these new apps that were popping up. They would put screen limits on one app, and then the child would figure out how to get through on another app. And they just were overwhelmed by everything that was out there and wanted one place that they could go. And I remember one guy in particular, he said, I just wish there was a big button I could just push and I could click on the button and then it would just tell me whatever I needed to help my family in that moment. And we set out to solve this. We didn't know if that was going to look like something on, some sort of survey or some sort of email newsletter. And eventually we decided on an AI tool because this AI tool can help get quick information to parents right when they need it. AI, can give an answer so quickly. And also because it can give like more personalized answers to parents, not just generic information, but it'll actually respond and tell them what to say to their 11-year-old versus their 14-year-old. And so we knew that that's what we needed to do is get this AI tool out to parents to meet those needs that were expressed in those focus groups.
And one of the common questions around new AI tools in general is, where is the data sourced from and how can we trust it? So can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. So ours is a closed source tool, meaning it only can pull from information that we give it. We have a database of trusted resources, trusted partners of the Parent Center and the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. These are organizations anywhere from the National Center on Missing Exploited Children, NCMEC, to Protect Young Eyes, to Thorn, just to name a few. These trusted organizations that have great, safe resources to help protect your children online, and the topics range. And so we've partnered with these organizations to have their resources on our AI tool, and that's the only thing that the AI tool can pull from, which makes it safe. It can't just pull from the general internet.
That's good to know. And it's cool to hear behind the scenes of how AI programming works, because the whole concept of AI is still very overwhelming and confusing to me. So that's cool to hear that you guys have those built-in safeguards and that parents can trust where their answers are being sourced from.
I just wanted to add that one of the questions that we have gotten a lot since creating this AI tool was, what makes this different from just other AI tools? And just to speak to that quickly, right now, ours pulls from those trusted resources. And if you were to go onto any other tool, such as ChatGPT or Claude AI, and ask the same sort of questions that you'd be asking our AI tool about digital safety or protecting your child from a scary situation online, there's kind of two things that happen. The first is you would either get an answer where it says, sorry, restricted content, we cannot give you an answer because you mentioned something like sextortion or grooming online. But these are real questions that you might have. Like, you really need to know what to do now that your daughter's being groomed online, or you think your son's being sextorted. What do I do? And the current chat tools out there would just mark this as, oh, we can't talk about this. Or if they did give you information, it would be a lot of incorrect information or resources that you wouldn't want your child to find. If you ask a question such as, how do I protect my children from pornography? There's been multiple times when I have asked that sort of question on a chat tool that's out there and have been referenced has led me to websites that have scary pornographic material on the website. And that's not what parents want their children to have. And so we knew that we needed to fill this space with something safe.
Yeah. And I just want to mention a recent Supreme Court ruling because it relates to all of this. But recently, the U.S. Supreme Court decided not to review a ruling that provided X, which used to be Twitter, with legal immunity for possessing, distributing, and benefiting from child sexual abuse material, which is discouraging to hear. But this should also motivate parents to be the ones to hold tech companies and social media platforms accountable and find ways to protect their own children. So can you speak to how the Parent Center helps empower parents to protect their kids and where parents can find out more about it?
Yes. So the Parent Center originally began because we needed this army of parents, because we were trying to pass legislation similar to what you mentioned about protecting children online and all the new AI harms. And we would go to Congress and we'd go to Capitol Hill and we'd meet with these senators, and then they would always ask, okay, this is great information. Thank you for making us aware of these issues. But like, if this is really such a problem, where are the parents? I mean, I could tell you where the parents are. They're at home trying to put screen time limits on their child's phone. They're at home dealing with difficult situations and having hard conversations and doing their best to protect children online. But they're not on Capitol Hill because they're in the trenches. And this AI tool, another aspect of it is providing advocacy opportunities to parents. So giving parents answers and the help that they need, but also telling them how they can make a difference in their home and in their community and on Capitol Hill, so that we can rally these parents in situations like the one you mentioned to get them together to send in a letter or send a message so that senators know that this is something that parents are worried about and that we can really pass laws that are going to protect our children on a large scale. ParentCenter.org is where our AI tool will live, and the resources you need will be there. So go find us on ParentCenter.org and share with your family and friends and use the tool yourself. I hope it is helpful for you.
All right, appreciate that, Madison. That's going to leave us with time on the podcast today for one last thing.
We've got Hebrews 11:1. Now, faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. We don't always see all the things we claim to believe in terms of materially right in front of us, and yet we know it is true, and that's the power of faith, being able to be certain of something that we can't always see, and there's a lot of comfort in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if faith doesn't mean you're just blindly following something, like we definitely have confidence and we have hope in what God has done and what God will do because of his word and what he promises us, so we can rest in that. All right, good spot to leave it on this edition of the Quick Start Podcast. As always, get on over to cbnnews.com and faithwire.com for more news from a Christian perspective. God bless. See you back here tomorrow.